encouraged to think about, and it's the same for social enterprises. People get very caught up about what business structure to set up, and in Australia at the moment there's not a specific legal structure for a social enterprise, so people tend to feel like they have to choose one. And I think it's very important before doing that to go back and recognise that strategy needs to drive structure, and really just stop and think about what kind of venture you're looking at, and let that inform your structure. Not some people just get told, oh, you have to, you need to be this. You must be a not-for-profit, or you must not be a not-for-profit. There's groups of advisors in the social enterprise space that are very committed to one or the other structure in terms of for-profit or not-for-profit. The fact is that being attached for any other reason other than an incredibly rational one for your particular enterprise is not a good idea. You need to stop and think about what your venture will need. Some ventures will need grants, and you might want to look at a not-for-profit structure. Some ventures, in the space at the moment, there's still limited funding for social enterprises. So many ventures are choosing the for-profit model simply because there is capacity to raise capital. And that's a good reason. That's a good reason for choosing a for-profit structure. I think a less good reason is just the view that it has to be a for-profit structure or it won't be a viable business. You can set up under a not-for-profit structure and do business. So I think, there's many good reasons, and I think that's what I'm trying to be clear there. It's really important to know what your strategy is, what you're looking for. Do you need to raise large amounts of capital? Are you going to be able to do that through a not-for-profit structure? Perhaps for that reason it needs to be private. Are you actually a venture that's so strong in its social orientation that you could probably always operate with 50% grant funding, and so you might want to be a not-for-profit? They're the sorts of things you need to look at. So there's, as you can see, there is quite a range under this whole social enterprise banner. You can pretty much choose any legal structure, from a range of not-for-profit structures through to a range of for-profit legal structures. And again, as I've said it really depends on what you're wanting to do with your enterprise. If you want to raise a lot of grants, you will need to be a not-for-profit. And I think generally where you're looking at a product-based social enterprise, particularly probably a for-profit legal structure might fit you more. When you're going to be dealing a lot with intellectual property, although that could run under a not-for-profit too. So it's really sort of, again, going back to who you are and what needs you have as a social entrepreneur too. What you're needing from the structure as well is also important. The factors that make the big difference are under the not-for-profit structures, the company limited by guarantee, the incorporated associations or non-trading cooperatives. And not everyone realises that co-ops have two legal structures. The non-trading cooperative is a not-for-profit structure, whereas the trading cooperative is a for-profit structure. Both run on membership and have a highly engaged membership with quite a bit of power over the venture. Much more so than the other not-for-profit structures. Say an incorporated association would have its members meeting all invited to the annual general meeting, whereas co-ops will invite their members quite often to every monthly meeting. So you have quite a big difference in membership engagement there. Otherwise, in an incorporated association, your monthly meetings are generally only going to be attended by your board members. Of course, as a community association, you'd still want to engage with your members quite a lot, but the level of engagement, and power over the organisation isn't the same as it is in a co-op. For a company limited by guarantee, membership engagement can be even less. It has a bit more of that company style to it, but it's certainly still a not-for-profit. And the greatest hallmark of not-for-profits is that the assets just can't be distributed to members. All that's across any not-for-profit structure. However, as a not-for-profit, while that means, so as an entrepreneur, as someone who's starting that venture, you've really got to be quite clear that you might build up a capital base in that venture, which isn't yours, and never will be. So even if you wind up that venture, you'd need to be passing it on to another not-for-profit venture. So I think that's really quite important to be aware of. But at the same time, you are quite a bit more protected from, to some extent, if there was debts, if there was issues. Unless you are deemed to have traded insolvent, then you can't get away from that. Then you'd still be in trouble, and you'd still be chased for any debts, or if you've done something highly negligible. So as a board member, if you've allowed certain things to happen within the not-for-profit, you could still be chased for debts if you haven't acted in accordance with the rules of the organisation, for example. But on the whole, you are separated a little bit, and you have more, unless as long as you're deemed not to have traded insolvent, you're less likely to be personally chased for debts from that not-for-profit company. The for-profit legal structure, of course, you then, unless you write something into the rules, you may build that up and have some access to some of the assets. So you then have to really make it clear that you're still a social enterprise. Private companies, there are many around who just couldn't be deemed social enterprises. They're not actually doing one of the hallmarks of social enterprises, which is distributing profits back to the benefit of the client group. So you often have to write, while you might still want to be a private social enterprise so that you can source more capital and more investment, you might have to write something into your rules to make sure that you're still meeting those the general definition of a social enterprise. So that's important too. And that goes the same for any of those sole trader, partnership, even trading co-ops. Co-ops are a bit different because they're one member, one vote, and that usually is, of course, the big difference between a co-op and a private company. A co-op can be trading and very much a business, but the influence is not so much influenced by how much shares you own. If you're a member, each member has the same vote in decision making in a trading co-op, which is really interesting. And co-ops can work really well when there's a group of people that want to develop a more mutual social enterprise, because the co-ops and mutuals do fall within the broader social enterprise banner. Yes, as for sole traders and partners, there's very similar things as the private company, where you do need to write somewhere in your rules something about your social mission and and why and how you're going to be distributing your profits, to clarify that you are a social enterprise. Yes, I hope that explains in a nutshell all the differences of the different structures. At the end of the day, it's just important to really match that structure to what you want to achieve and not get too caught up with an advisor that tells you you can only do one thing. There is a lot of misinformation around. Quite a lot of advisors will tell you that it's very expensive to set up a cooperative. It's not really. I don't know why that people say that. You can just get the standard rules from the Department of Fair Trading, and it costs $300 to register.